Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today what I'm doing is a talk about if you're getting ready to sell a horse, what paperwork do you need to get together? Okay, so let's say you've decided to sell your horse. That is a kind of a big undertaking. So now you can sell them on your own, or you can actually use a horse broker. I've never done that, so I don't want to give any kind of tips on that, but there is those options. So if you do want to check into that option, if you don't want the stress of selling a horse yourself, it doesn't have to be stressful though. Let's start doing your paperwork. You need to have an idea what your list price is, like how much you're going to try to sell the horse for, like on your ad, but also what your like bottom dollar will be. So you need to already have that decided before someone comes to look out at your horse. So let's say you put your horse up for sale, okay? And then you have someone say they're wanting to come look at it. So they will come out to your property, usually, to go ahead and try out your horse. So now this all depends on what all you want to do with the horse. And sometimes people buy it sight unseen. I've now had a few people from just a good video, they wanted to buy the horse, they just showed up, checked on the horse, and then just put it on the trailer and go. Again, it all just kind of depends. Most of the time though, people do want to try out the horse when they first get there. So this is something that I definitely suggest. I don't always do because I kind of just read the situation, but you would want them to fill out a liability waiver, just to sign that if something happens, because this is riding a horse and you know things can happen, that if something happened and they fell off and they got hurt, that you would not be liable. If you're very concerned about that, do check with your lawyer or your local attorney about a liability waiver, but that is something you can definitely look into. There are free principles online. Again, I don't know how well that would go up in a court of law. That's just something that I'm trying to start implementing myself, just to protect myself, even though I tend to forget and don't really do that because I just get caught up talking and stuff like that, and I'm like, ooh, I should have had that done, because I have had someone fall off before, because I had one person come to my house and hopped on the horse, took off on a run, and they just fell off, and I'm like, what just happened? They're like, oh, I didn't know how to stop, so I just jumped. You're like, yikes. So now, from now on, I have them sign a liability waiver. And I do have them right in the arena now, only in the arena because of things like that. So you have that first. Next, let's say that they decide to go through with the sale and you guys haggle the price and you agree upon a price. You will then probably need to decide like a time for them to come back and pick up the horse, unless they brought a trailer with them. So kind of fast forward to when they're picking up the horse and you're finishing the transaction. So you will need to have now these are all things you don't necessarily have to have. You know, depending on the price of the horse, if it's a $200 horse, they may just hand you $200 cash and you just hand them the horse and be like, here you go. It's a $30,000 horse, a lot more goes into that. So it all just depends on the price of the horse and what you feel comfortable with. But this is just what I use, is a bill of sale is always kind of helpful. Especially if your horse is not registered, it kind of helps to protect yourself there. But I would just have a bill of sale, and again, there's plenty of printables. I think there's some on equine.com of what you could use for those. Just Google horse bill of sale and there'll be some of them up there. But include in there what the price was, when that happened, your address and and that seller's address, and then you just have both people sign it, and that would be your bill of sale. Need to be possibly on the bill of sale, or a separate piece of paper itself, is about a pre-purchase exam, and that would usually have been discussed during the haggling time. And again, depends on the price of your horse, but some people want to go through with a pre-purchase exam with the vet before purchasing the horse. And again, most time you have the buyer usually does that, but do not assume. Like, you need to talk to them before you go through and do the exam. Like, you need to for sure know who is paying for what and how much of a pre-purchase exam are you going to get. So basic ones would be like the flexion test, just a general health. You could also have a lameness exam. You go all the way up to x-rays. So it's a huge gamut of options for a pre-purchase exam. So that's something that I would just go ahead and have paperwork filled out for that, as well as what I would be willing to pay for it out of pocket, because if it goes poorly, then a lot of times the sale will not go through. So that's something just to keep in mind with that. But so yes, you need a liability form, you need a bill of sale, a pre-purchase exam form, like be ready to go. You need to have a list of, or just a copy of their vet records. So anything that they've had done in the past, when was the last time they had vaccinations, a list of their vaccinations that they are current on, a list of vaccinations that they've maybe had previously but not had this year. So all that is really good to have for that new buyer, so that they would have the history of the horse. Next, you need to have a Coggins. Now this is pretty wide known that you do need to have a Coggins pulled on each horse every year, just to make sure that they are clear of that. Plus, if they're gonna cross state lines, they would need to have that. So you need to have a Coggins. If they're crossing state lines, you typically need to have a health certificate from a vet. That costs about $25. I would not get one until someone has decided to purchase the horse, because then that can be discussed with the pre-purchase exam price, and you would just do it during that. So you could kind of put that onto your pre-purchase exam paperwork, just kind of work that out. But if you do get a health certificate, make sure you have that. Also have a copy of the pre-purchase exam. Or let's say you end up paying for a pre-purchase exam, then you'd want to have a copy of that. So if the buyer decided not to buy it, you would have that copy to give to the next buyer if they are interested. Okay, next, again, a lot of these are not necessarily requirement, is that you get a list of your vaccines that they have, especially helpful for them if they're going to a boarding barn. A list of your farrier, like the last time the farrier came out, and your farrier's name and phone number, and that way in case they wanted to, and also what they did, like a trim, just front shoes, what size of shoe. All of those are really helpful when you're first buying a horse, and that way you don't have to go through the guess and check period. Feeding, and then the feeding schedules, like how much feed are you feeding and what feed. Super important, so that whenever they transition, they may transition to a different feed, but by knowing that, they can, what I usually like to do is give with the new buyer about 2 servings, like 2 feedings of my feed that I feed, and that way I'll feed them that day before they leave, and then the next day they can feed about 3/4 of my feed and 1/4 of theirs, and just slowly incorporate the new feed. So then that way they're not just switching the feed too soon and causing colic, especially when you're going to a new location. So that's something good to know. I also like to give a list of like training that the horse knows, or like cues that they know. So for example, if your horse could bow, that would be something to list on a piece of paper, saying this is how you cue the horse to bow. Or if they could do a flying lead change, this is how I cue the horse for a flying lead change. I like to list all of the maneuvers that they're able to do, that they already have been trained to do. Also all the training exercises I have done. They might not ever look at that, but at least that way they know this horse knows it. I don't have to teach it from scratch. Next is kind of a little bit separate, is a trial. Some people want to do like a 7-day trial with the horse before they officially purchase the horse. I do not do that myself, just because sometimes they go very far away. Something could happen in transport. Once they get to the new location, if the new owner doesn't know how to properly take care of a horse or something, they could end up taking bad care of my horse and then just giving it right back to me. So I do like to do a buyback contract. So if they decide to sell the horse, they're supposed to give me first chance to purchase back. I've had one person sell the horse and they did not do that. So I guess if I push that in like the court, I could, but that kind of here or there, and I do know the new owners and they're fine. So that's fine that they didn't, but you could do that to kind of help, and it helps promote how much you do care for the horse. But a trial I don't like to do, but if you do want to do that, make sure you have a paperwork about that. Again, Google some forms on those to help you as well. Next is lease. You may be wanting to lease your horse instead of just sell them, because maybe you want to keep them forever. For example, one of my personal horses I would like to lease out because he's no longer competition sound, but he's still sound enough to do trail riding and family type riding. So I would like to find him either a cheap lease or maybe a free lease, but that where they could not sell him. So I would like to get something like that together. But that again would be on a kind of a paper for that, and it'd be kind of straightforward on what the lease agreement was. And it's either by month or by year, typically with leases. And finally, just the horse's papers. So if they're registered, then have their registry number as well as their actual original papers. I would probably keep a copy of their papers, just so that you have a record that that was a horse you had in your possession. And if you are doing a registered horse, remember you're supposed to be doing a transfer of ownership. What you could do is just fill out the transfer of ownership paperwork and send it with the new owner, and then they could file it. Then that would be on them as far as the cost to transfer the ownership. It's usually not bad though. It's between 25 and 50 per deciding of the breed. The only problems I've seen in the past is, let's say a horse has been changed hands a bunch, and if people have not transferred ownership, it's hard to trace back all the previous owners. So there is a little bit of issue with that. But in general, those are the things you need. I know that's a bunch. That's like, to me, worst case scenario of all the things you could have. But I kind of feel like, you know, more is better. Whenever you're handing, I just have a little folder and just get a folder on it, and then I put a picture of the horse on the outside of it, or actually my logo of my barn on the outside of it, and that is what I give with my new owners. I also like to usually make a stall sign, just for fun, with the horse's name on it to give to the owner as a gift as well. And sometimes the horse comes with the halter or something if it has its name on it. So any of those things are great for new buyers with their new horse. So that is what I have as far as paperwork for when I am getting ready to sell a horse. So I hope this was helpful. Please comment down below anything you think I've missed, or any other tips you have for selling a horse and making it as seamless and easy as possible. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. God bless, be adventurous, and I'll see you next time. Bye.